The Reconquista, or the reconquest of the Iberian Peninsula, was one of the longest and most remarkable struggles in European history. While many people today are aware of Spain's religious history, including the infamous Spanish Inquisition, far fewer realize that Spain and Portugal were not always under the control of Christian kingdoms. For almost 8 centuries, the peninsula was the scene of a relentless conflict between Christian monarchies in the north and Muslim caliphates and emirates in the south. The story begins in the year 711, when the armies of the Umayyad Caliphate crossed from North Africa into Iberia. Their campaign quickly shattered the old Visigothic kingdom that had ruled the peninsula, and within a short span, the Muslims pushed deep into the land, placing pressure on the small Christian stronghold of Asturias in the north. Of the arrival of the Muslims did not go unanswered. Only a decade after the initial invasion, the first sparks of resistance appeared. The Battle of Covadonga is often remembered as the starting point of the Reconquista. Pelagius, a noble of Visigothic descent, led a small band of rebels into the rugged mountains of the Picos de Europa. The Umayyad forces, who were returning from their failed clashes with the Franks in modern-day France, decided to crush this rebellion in order to restore morale. But the mountain terrain favored the Asturian rebels, and Pelagius refused to yield. Against the odds, the Christians won a victory that forced the Muslim army to retreat. Though small in scale, this triumph ignited a new sense of purpose and gave birth to the Christian crusading spirit that would shape Iberian politics for centuries. Still, progress was slow. The Muslims were focused on consolidating their rule from their capital at Cordoba, and the Christian kingdoms were too weak and divided to launch a full-scale reconquest. Asturias gradually expanded its borders, but it was a cautious process of decades marked by skirmishes and careful fortification. By the 10th century, they had managed some notable gains, such as capturing the city of Leon in 924. Yet for generations, the Christians remained fractured, uncertain over who would lead the campaign or which territories belonged to which kingdom. Internal rivalries often delayed broader advances. The turning point came in the 11th century, when the Christian states of the north had matured into organized kingdoms. Castilla, Leon, Navarre, and Catalonia joined the Reconquista alongside Asturias, which by then had evolved into a more established realm. In 1085, a breakthrough occurred when King Alfonso VI of Castile captured the ancient Visigothic capital of Toledo from one of the weakened Muslim Taifa states. Toledo's fall was a symbolic and strategic victory that lifted Christian morale and demonstrated that large-scale advances were now possible. Yet the triumph soon brought new dangers. Alarmed by the rapid Christian progress, the Muslim rulers of Iberia appealed for help from across the Strait of Gibraltar. Their call was answered by the Almoravids, a dynasty of fierce Berber warriors from North Africa. The Almoravids crossed into Spain and for a time halted the Christian momentum. Their discipline and religious zeal strengthened Muslim defenses, but the Christians were persistent and continued fighting in both Iberia and Portugal. Portugal's rise was one of the remarkable side stories of the Reconquista. On June 24, 1128, Afonso Henriques clashed with his own mother Teresa at the Battle of São Mamede. His victory established his authority and paved the way for the birth of an independent Portuguese kingdom. In 1143, the Kingdom of Leon formally recognized him as King of Portugal, and in 1179, the Pope confirmed the title. With legitimacy secured, Portugal expanded southward into the Algarve during the following century, consolidating itself as a lasting state. This success was aided by instability in the Muslim world. The Almoravids, who had once appeared invincible, eventually collapsed. They were replaced by another North African dynasty, the Almohads. At first, the Almohads seemed even more formidable, but in 1212 their power was shattered at the Battle of Las Navas de Tolosa. A coalition of Christian armies from Castile, Aragon, and Navarre joined together to crush the Almohads despite being outnumbered. This victory opened the floodgates for Christian expansion. Agreements such as the Pact of Cazorla helped keep the Christian kingdoms united by outlining which territories each could claim. With less infighting and more cooperation, the pace of reconquest accelerated. Ferdinand III of Castile and Leon spearheaded this new phase. He captured Cordoba in 1236, striking at the heart of Muslim power in Spain. Other important cities soon fell. By 1250, nearly the entire peninsula was under Christian control, with one major exception, the Kingdom of Granada. Granada survived not because of overwhelming strength, but because Ferdinand realized that total expulsion of Muslims would devastate the economy. Instead, Granada was allowed to remain as a tributary state under Castilian suzerainty. The Muslims of Granada paid annual tribute in exchange for autonomy. This arrangement allowed Islamic culture and scholarship to flourish for a time, and even influenced Christian rulers. Alfonso X of Castile established the School of Translators in Toledo, where Arabic scientific and philosophical texts were translated into Latin, enriching European knowledge. Meanwhile, the Crown of Aragon expanded eastward across the Mediterranean into the Balearic Islands, Valencia, and parts of Sicily, while Portugal continued pushing southward. For a while, it seemed the Reconquista was complete, with Christians satisfied to let Granada exist in a subordinate role. Yet hostilities never fully ended. Skirmishes flared, and in 1340, the Battle of Rio Salado marked the last major clash of the era. Castilian and Portuguese forces defeated a combined army of Granadans and their Moroccan allies, effectively ending any hope of Muslim resurgence. The 15th century brought decisive changes. In 1469, the marriage of Ferdinand of Aragon and Isabella of Castile united two powerful kingdoms into what became known as the Catholic monarchy. This union created the military and political might necessary to finish the Reconquista. The rulers were less tolerant than their predecessors, and they set their sights firmly on Granada, the last bastion of Islam in Iberia. In 1491, Ferdinand and Isabella laid siege to Granada. The Muslim ruler Muhammad XII, known as Boabdil, resisted, but his position was hopeless. After months of siege warfare, he attempted to secure aid from North Africa, but none arrived. Bound by a truce that promised surrender if no help came within 4 months, Boabdil kept his word. On January 2, 1492, he handed over the keys of Granada to the Catholic monarchs. The Reconquista was complete. For Christians across Europe, this victory was seen as redemption, especially after the traumatic fall of Constantinople. To the Ottoman Turks in 1453, it was celebrated as proof that Islam could be driven back in Europe. Yet the aftermath revealed a darker side. The monarchs issued the Alhambra decree, expelling all practicing Jews from their kingdoms. Soon afterward, Muslims were forced to convert to Catholicism or leave. Those who converted were often treated with suspicion and subjected to the scrutiny of the Spanish Inquisition, which became infamous for its severity. The Reconquista, therefore, was not a single war, but a series of campaigns, battles, and political maneuvers, spread over nearly 8 centuries. Its slow progress was shaped by constant Christian infighting and by the repeated arrival of powerful North African allies for the Muslims. At times, civil wars within the Islamic world weakened resistance and gave Christians opportunities to strike. At other times, Christian rivalries stalled momentum. The decision to leave Granada semi-independent for 2 centuries also prolonged the struggle. Nevertheless, the end result was clear. By the close of the 15th century, the Iberian Peninsula was firmly under Christian control. Spain and Portugal emerged not only as united Christian monarchies, but also as ambitious powers ready to project their strength abroad. Indeed, 1492 was not only the year of Granada's fall, but also the year Columbus sailed westward with the sponsorship of Ferdinand and Isabella, opening the age of European exploration and colonial expansion. The Reconquista remains remembered today as both a triumph and a tragedy. For many Spaniards and Portuguese, it represents the recovery of their ancestral lands and the forging of their national identities. For others, it stands as a symbol of intolerance and forced conversions. Either way, it was one of the most decisive episodes in the shaping of Europe. A struggle that began with a small band of rebels in the mountains of Asturias ended with the fall of a kingdom that had once been a jewel of Islamic civilization. The Reconquista lasted nearly 800 years, and its legacy continues to echo in history, books and monuments, and in the cultural memory of the Iberian Peninsula.